Regen Ag Nation, thank you so much for joining us. Trey Reed here. We've got a special guest today. We're psyched to bring in Michael from Huma. They are the world's leading Humic and Humic substance company. They're based out of the United States, but obviously they're kind of world renowned. They do business all over the world. Michael is working in a lot of these different industries, not only in the dries, but also with a lot of the liquids. He is somebody that helps us out on a daily basis. We're lucky enough to have him with us today. So we thought, hey, let's ask some of these questions. What can we do in the fall to prepare ourselves for the next spring? So Michael, first of all, can you give me just a quick background of Huma, the company, sort of what they're all involved in, and then we'll work into that other stuff.
Yeah, Huma's been around since 1973 and started with a dry product that is mined, and then late 70s we found a way to extract all the goodies from that dry material, and it has a very small carbon molecule. We fracture that carbon into just 1 to 10 rings long, extract that, and comes out with a liquid that we call microcarbon technology. And that small carbon molecule liquid is then put into every one of our products. So that's the carrier, that's the quick uptake, protection of nutrients, building soils. So that's the liquid line that we do out of Arizona. We have our Humate mine out of New Mexico that is world famous for what I call the trifecta: high fulvic content, low ash, and low humidity.
One thing that I can speak to is, in particular in foliar applications, this microcarbon technology is awesome. We track this through plant sap technology, which is a very sensitive form of extracting the sap, and it's in parts per million for what's actually inside the plant at the time. We've done this a number of times with their foliar fertilizers and micronutrients and things like that, and then others. I can say that once you make those applications with the microcarbon, they really pick up. I'm interested to hear, have you guys done side-by-sides with your materials versus something else?
We have done side-by-sides. Also, what I love what we do is that application, foliar application, letting it dry within an hour, getting a new sample, and watching all the nutrient levels rise in the plant. That's impressive.
Yeah, so it's not just about what you're applying, but how it influences the uptake of other nutrients. Is that what you're getting at?
That is correct. Yes, certain products that you wouldn't think have maybe a calcium in them, but you might see the calcium rise in a plant analysis.
Yeah, and we've seen that as well in some of our sap sampling. So one of the things I want to get into a little bit, Michael, is this idea of the size of the humic particles. I think there's a lot of mystery there. Oftentimes people will kind of use, as a rule of thumb, they'll say humics in soils, fulvics in plants or foliars. Now, if I'm understanding this correctly, microcarbon is even smaller than fulvics. So how do you differentiate? Do you think that rule of thumb is kind of a wives' tale, or do you think that's accurate? And how does the MCT fall into this?
So I consider that not a wise tale. We have always used humics in the soil. The molecule is just too big to get into the plant. And so then when fulvics got popular, as a grower, I loved that because now I could add something to a product to be foliar fed and have that more efficient than just a standalone product. What we've done at Huma is take that a step further, and now we've micronized that carbon, and so now it's a quicker uptake, whether we're going through the leaf or through the plant. The microcarbon technology protects the nutrient molecule, so in a foliar state we're going to be less susceptible to toxicity. In the soil, we're not going to tie up. We're going to get right into the plant and attract nutrients that are already in the soil even.
Yeah, I think that's huge. One of the comments that I will make is, in the 3 years that we've been utilizing this microcarbon technology in our foliar fertilizers, we have never had one instance of phytotoxicity, which is
Wow.
pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I've applied at home from Phoenix, Arizona, 115 degrees, iron in the middle of the day, and saw a positive response the next morning. That's how the microcarbon technology protects the nutrient. I think that's a pretty good example. 115 degrees.
Yeah, you're putting it up against the toughest test that it will face from that
Yes,
perspective.
because usually a foliar application, we talk about generally doing that in the morning or in the evening, and but I just had to see how it would work
Awesome.
in the heat of the day.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get into some of this fall stuff. We're really trying to build biology, build soil structure, things like that. Let me just kind of pull up. When you talk soil structure, let's kind of come in on something like this. Obviously, we've got states of decay here going on. We don't have perfect soil structure. We're also kind of working this field, right, to work some of this stuff in. So tell me this, at this point in time, you mentioned that Humics would be kind of your go-to. So
Yeah.
what kind of applications? Are we making dry applications? Are we making liquid applications? And what is your preference coming into growing a new crop of onions, say?
So two things. Liquid applications for the digestion that you mentioned earlier, of the crop residue, and dry applications if you're adding your biology. They need a food source. The Humics are a great food source for that biology that you're doing. Also will aid in the breakdown of the crop residues. It'll feed all those microbes, get good healthy soil, and just, I like to say, work its magic all winter for the grower.
Yeah. So Humics, let's talk rates in the fall. I mean, obviously, to some extent, it's based on the budget, the crop that's being grown. But what are kind of minimum and maximum rates that you would utilize in a dry Humic situation?
Yeah, so we feel that if we are under 100 pounds to the acre, whether that's a screened 1 to 3 millimeter or a raw quarter minus, under 100 pounds to the acre, we're not doing enough for soil that's in need. If we have good healthy soil and we're going to try to maintain 100 pounds, 125 will be all right. So soil that we're really trying to turn around and get healthy on a general stage, we're in that 200 to 250 pounds to the acre. That can be broadcast and lightly tilled under. That can go through any kind of application that works for a grower.
Okay, perfect. Now here's our plan with this field, Michael, and I just want to get your comments on this and see if we can tee this up and move this forward. But basically, we're at the point where we're breaking this residue down. We'll kind of let that process unfold. There'll also be a bed up where we'll put some fertilizer in. We want to make sure and get some humic on this field, so we're going to be blending some fertilizer materials along with the humic. So we're going to be using a soft rock phosphate. We're going to be using an SOP, so we've got some potassium in these beds, along blended with some humic. We're looking to get that down. Is that something we should be broadcasting out right now before we form these beds, or should we wait until we've kind of got the beds shaped and we're all ready to go?
I love to do a broadcast application in a field that looks just like this. It is post-harvest, been treated for your crop residue, and now if we can get an application in this state, then bed up, then we have all of the material you talked about, plus the humates in that bed and furrows, and so really we're wall to wall.
Perfect. So we'll give this a couple weeks to work, and then we'll go ahead and broadcast that humic out with those other materials that we feel are very compatible with biology and soils. We're always trying to reduce the salt load, reduce the chloride load in the soil, so we're very particular about the fertilizers that we do use. Humic is going to be a big part of that, whether it's dry or liquid, but I feel like you have to use pounds of material to really change soils. A lot of our liquid applications are more geared towards, I guess, nutrient efficiency or, some kind of in-furrow response to the crop itself. I mean, tell us, are we barking up the right tree here?
No, that's good. We feel that our soil products with the microcarbon, as fabulous as they are, it is the quick. The dry Humics are that slow, let's work all winter, let's go into the spring with added benefit, added soil structure, nutrient availability, the buffering of the salts and those kinds of things that are your concern side. The Humates will help take care of that over the winter.
Awesome. Okay, so Michael, let's start with the basics here, right?
Okay.
Some people might not know about Humic. It seems like a lot of Humic substances have kind of gone from 0 to 60 just within the last decade. Even picked up a lot of steam in the last 5 years. So let's start at the most basic level. What are these materials and where do they come from?
So they are a mined material. It is an oxidized coal with high humic content in that 70-80% range. Of that portion is a high fulvic acid. So we feel that our raw materials are a humic kind of on steroids, where we're going to act just a little quicker because of the high fulvic content, and also 78 minerals.
Okay. Yeah, so that's awesome. So you mentioned that this is a mined material. The source is leonardite. To me, what I'm hearing from you at the most basic level is carbon. Is that correct?
It's all about the carbon.
All about carbon.
That is correct.
Okay, so why would I use carbon in these soils out here? What does carbon do for me?
Yeah, so the plant, the number one thing that a plant needs is carbon. And so if we can apply carbon in the soil and work that magic, and then have a good clean carbon liquid for nutrients, then we're working both ends of the plant.
Right, right. So yeah, that's interesting, because oftentimes we forget about carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. We sort of get those for free, right? Either from the atmosphere, the soil, through irrigation. But oftentimes our carbon content of our plants will be 100 times higher than what it is of even nitrogen, which is our most used nutrient that we're putting out here. So why are people not investing more in carbon then, right? Because we kind of know that our organic matters are going down in the soil. So why in the world, if I'm willing to go out there and put urea on or something else, why wouldn't I be thinking about putting carbon in here?
We're not taught that. And even to this day, I'm not sure we're taught in school that much about soil health and plant health as far as what carbon does.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, I feel like this is kind of society where we sometimes take things for granted.
Yeah, and if I don't know, and if somebody says, oh, let's get some Humate out there, it's like, whoa, I don't know anything about this. Yeah. And I, to this day, get questions from growers. They're like, I hear about Humates, humic acids, fulvic acids, I just don't know anything about it, even to this day.
Right. So if you talk about carbon, I mean, the list literally could go on and on and on about what it does for the plant, what it does in the soil. But I want to focus in on just a couple of things that I think are tremendous about carbon. Water holding capacity and complexing of nutrients. So why don't you tell me about not only how much more water we're capable of holding if we have good carbon content in the soil, but also how much can we expect to gain in terms of the nutrients that we're putting on and getting and delivering to the plants?
Yeah, so the Humates will, first of all, make nutrients that are stored in the soil unavailable. They will help make them available. They will make any nutrients that are applied during the season or pre-season, will make them more available to the plant. So I've always had the notion that if I can free up what's been tied up for generations in my soil, replace that with a nutrient that is usable, now I've got a free flowing nutrient availability to my plant, and I'll have a healthier crop.
Absolutely. And have you guys done any water studies in terms of how water infiltrates the soils, how much you can store it in the soil?
So we found that if we can get a Humate down on ground similar to this. We've done studies where we've put in 1 inch per acre of water, and untreated would take 3 minutes to have that water penetrate, and with Humates we're under a minute, and that's huge.
Yeah.
And now as we condition that soil with Humates, we can hold, boy, I think it's like 300 times the amount of actual water in the soil. And how fabulous is that when you can skip an irrigation, maybe be a little lighter in your irrigation when there's environmental stresses, actually have a reservoir that your plant can rely on.
Right. We're talking about time and money with all this stuff, right? That's part of regenerating soils, is also regenerating our pocketbooks. So when you're utilizing materials that put more water into your soil, that's less time that you spend irrigating. That's, you know, you've got time and money savings and all that. The materials that you are putting on are more efficient, and that's also more sustainable just overall, because we're not hauling in as much material and applying as many things, and we can be more targeted with our nutrient applications.
That sounds like a bunch of wins to me.
It really is. It really is. So let's go back to one more basic topic here, CEC. So if I'm looking at a soil like this, we might have, you know, 1.2% organic matters in these soils. Probably what was native at some point is roughly double that. I don't know that there's a lot of soils out here in western Idaho that are much more than that. But, you know, we'll pull a CEC on a soil like this that might be kind of a loam soil, and we'll have roughly a CEC of 25. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the CEC of Humic in particular, and those carbon materials that you guys are utilizing?
In the soil, if you were to retest?
I'm saying just, you know, the materials that you guys are, you know, applying to these fields. Yeah.
So when we apply into that 200, 250 pounds to the acre range, we'll get that CEC up into the 200, 300 range.
Okay, so that material itself is very high CEC, right? This humic material, instead of being like the soils, it could be 10, 20, 30 times that. And so now, sure, we might be only adding a couple of 100 pounds in, but if we do that year over year over year, not only are we going to be adding a lot of carbon, a lot of food source for the biology, but we should also be having more sites for those nutrients to hold on.
That is correct. And soil structure will change and improve. And then with that comes the nutrients and the water. It just is a snowball effect. And I'm a firm believer that if I build my soil over time, and then I stopped, my native soil will go back to native soil. And so Humates are not a one and done. They are a year after year. Let's slowly build and have something that is sustainable and for your life and your kids and grandkids' life.
Yeah, a lot of these farms that we're dealing with are multi-generation, and we want it to stay that way. Let's talk about the timing of all this, because you know, when I invest in these, if I'm the grower, I want to see a return, right? So we go back and forth. You can put some things in furrow from a liquid standpoint that will have immediate ROI, but let's talk about the dry side and what the ROI is. How long do I have to invest in dry humic before I start to, you know, really see some tangible monetary benefits out of that? What's your experience been?
So my experience, if we can get a fall application and then maybe something in the spring, we can see benefit in soil structure and crop response in the first year.
Okay.
And then it will build from there.
Okay. So now to truly change soils, I mean, you're talking build biology, build structure, all those kind of things that we talk about that are true soil health building. I'm assuming that it's a little bit longer on that. Do we invest in this for, say, 5 years before we really start to build the health of these soils?
I think in 2 years you start to see a pretty good benefit.
Okay, awesome. So, I mean, you really are talking somewhat long-term in terms of, you know, some of the things that we're buying, the inputs we're utilizing, but for the most part, these are also getting an immediate ROI.
Yes, and then it depends on the product that you apply. Something that's a larger chip, 1/4 of an inch, is going to take longer to digest in your soil. And that will be available a little bit later in the year as that breaks down. something that is on a smaller size or a powder type will be more available to digest in the soil quicker, and you'll see a response on that part. So it's almost, if you go like to a quarter minus style material, it's almost like a time release. I see a little benefit in 3, 4, 5 months, but then the larger chips will take a year and a half to digest. But then I've got my second application, and that's the smaller particles along with more larger. And so it's just really just a cycle of that slow build. I think a slow build is a healthy build.
That's right. We're always looking for balance. We're not the get rich quick type. We want to invest in our soils. We want to properly locate nutrients and get the most out of each season. So it's about finding and striking that balance. Okay, I want to transition just a little bit. We love to have fun here with Regen Ag, so I want to play a little game with Michael here, and it's called True or False. So now I'm going to throw out some statements. Here's the way it works. I'm going to throw out some statements. I'm just going to get your reaction. True, false, set the record straight really quickly.
Verbal reaction or facial reaction? Like, Okay.
All right, first statement, number 1. Humic is humic is humic is humic. All the materials are the same.
That would be totally false. Is this where I go, what?
Now set the record straight quickly.
Okay, so quickly, quality matters. Our raw material is world famous because of the quality. It's again back to the trifecta: high fulvic, high low ash, low water content or humidity, and they are not all equal.
Okay, yeah. Some people will say that certain sources are great for a lot of reasons, but we now know that as they've looked at these mines, there's a lot of differences. Quickly, tell us what the differences are in terms of the moisture of the material you're harvesting and why it matters.
Well, it matters because the moisture content, if we're too moist, it has to be dried out. And there are companies that kiln dry their raw materials. I feel personally that if I kiln dry something, I'm killing in the drying of something. And I don't want that. I want what Mother Nature made for us, and keep it unadulterated.
Okay, I like that. All right, next statement. Here we go. Humic is snake oil.
Well, I think that's probably pretty false. So anything people don't understand is snake oil. Anything people don't understand is scary. And I totally get it, 100%. It's scary to say, let's try this new direction, or let's do this new direction. There will be a benefit. I tell people that just research humic substances on your crops. You will not find anything negative. I have never seen anything negative. And the time to start is now. It's kind of like planting a tree. Somebody says, when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, it's 10 years ago. Same with humates. So if you didn't start 10 years ago, start today.
I like that.
And don't be afraid. I think that is the key. The benefits are too fabulous, and the negatives, I can't tell you one.
Yeah, it's true. There's literally, if you want to nerd out, look up humic substances, humic acid. Just type that in your search bar in the Google Scholar. You will literally come up with tens and maybe even hundreds of thousands of studies. Is that true or false?
I would think so, yes.
Yes, okay. All right, next one. Humic is a silver bullet.
That would also be false. Humic substances are a fabulous tool to use, and it can be it can benefit so many other things. If you inoculate, or if you're putting in biology in your soil, that biology needs a food source, and so the humates do that. And so that tells me right off the bat, instantly, that this is not an all-encompassing everything.
Okay. With that being said, though, as far as there's so many different products now on the market, so many different technologies. People are talking about amino acids and inoculants and enzymes and, you know, all this stuff, fish hydrolysate. Like, there's just a multitude of different fertilizer products, new technology out there. If you could just pick one, do you think Humic would be that one?
Oh, it's mandatory to be in your mix.
Okay.
Definitely.
You heard it here, folks. From a biased opinion, Mr. Michael from Huma has said that Humic is the #1 go-to. But in all seriousness, I would tend to agree with that. It seems like wherever you use them, dry, liquid, you just have some type of beneficial response, be it soil biology, the crop itself. It's hard to miss. So if you're going to just go with one thing to improve soils and crops, I think Humic is a great place to start. So thank you so much for playing this game and joining us.
Fun stuff.
Shake my hand.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time.